I live in the Cobble Hill section of Brooklyn, New York. 40 square blocks of diversity, decay, development, and decorum. Historically a working-class neighborhood, Cobble Hill has become popular among young, mostly affluent families due to its proximity to Wall Street, reasonably priced classic residential properties, excellent public and private schools, and a very low crime rate. Now known as the Diaper District, Cobble Hill and the adjoining neighborhoods were recently rated among the most desirable areas in the city by the New York Times. One day, I replaced my air conditioner and put the old, trustworthy, spectacularly heavy and inefficient appliance out on the sidewalk, expecting that it would be picked up by the sanitation truck or maybe one of those scrapper guys in a van. At the time, I was unaware that I had already broken a couple of local laws, but no matter, in the few minutes it took to reinstall the child guard on the window, I was surprised to see that the 100-pound air conditioner was already gone. I wondered, where and how and to whom did it go? Curious, I picked up the camera and took a stroll around the neighborhood, thinking that I might spend a day or two talking with people about this phenomenon. Everyone I spoke with was friendly, although some chose not to be interviewed, possibly due to language barriers, cultural attitudes, citizenship issues, or other legal matters. The local grocery redeems empty bottles and cans, and this is where I met Anthony Christian, who agreed to an interview on the spot. Anthony, and you collect recyclable containers?
Yes.
Aluminum cans, bottles?
Yes.
How'd you get started?
Well, a friend of mine started me doing it about 30 years ago. Yeah.
How many?
About 30 years.
30 years. And in a typical day, if I may ask, how much do you make?
Maybe about $50 or $60 a day.
$50, $60. And you're out here for 8 hours?
No.
No. Like
maybe about 4 or 5.
4 or 5 hours, okay.
It's good money if you work 10. I mean, if you put in 10 hours, 8 hours a day, you probably could make more than at least $15 to $20 an hour if you dedicate yourself to it. You know, that's all I have to say.
You're your own boss?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's the best part about it. You know, I work when I want to.
Okay, have you ever been arrested for this?
Oh, no. Out of my 30 years, I've never been arrested for recycling.
Anything
because
else?
all the police know me, that's why. They see I've been in the neighborhood so long that everybody knows me. Well, I get stopped once in a while, but it's not that often. It's very rare. It depends on the situation where you at, because there's a lot of stuff going on in Brooklyn Heights. You know, there's burglaries and stuff. But people walking around with black bags, so the police is going to stop you if they see. That's why I use clear bags.
So you got a system?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Okay, do you collect anything else like copper or anything?
If I see some copper or something, I'll pick it up and take it. Yeah. If I see it, yeah, If I feel that it's worth it, because normally I carry it on my bike, as you see. So I don't carry no glass or nothing like that. I just carry plastics and aluminum. And
if you find some metal, copper, or whatever, you take it down to the scrapyard?
Yes, I do.
Down under the bridge?
Exactly.
That's a wrap, as we say in the music, the movie business. A wrap. Okay, if you would please tell me your name. Doesn't have to be your full name.
Oh, my name's Dustin.
If you would hold that about like down here. There we go, out of the frame.
Oh, I'm originally from Oklahoma, born and raised in Oklahoma City. I came out here, I was working for a carnival, came out here, and I've been in New York for about 3 months. But if I put in a full day, I usually make about $20, $25.
Okay, a nickel a hit?
Yeah.
Okay. If I may ask, where are you living?
I stay at the Bedford Atlantic, it's a transitional shelter right now.
Okay.
That's what they're helping me, you know, this whole transition thing, you have to get your TB test done, you have to get blood work done, and you have to do stuff like that before they actually put you in a work therapy like program type deal that helps you with jobs and things like that.
The local laws, are you familiar with what the fines are?
No. Not here yet. I haven't been written a ticket. I haven't gotten a ticket or anything. I'm trying to keep myself out of trouble no matter what.
您能不能，就是您同意接受我们问几个问题哈？
I had seen this couple a few times in the neighborhood, but was unable to fully explain to them that I was making a movie for television. On this day, I was accompanied by unit producer Martha Yuan Tao, who speaks Chinese.
How's it going?
He doesn't really speak Mandarin. He can understand me a little bit,
I see.
but he speaks Cantonese.
I see.
Or I think he's just pretending to
I see. I see.
After some negotiating, we were granted permission to use the recording, and the interview commenced.
You know it might be on television? Okay.
他也帮我们东西给人家偷走了。
They were telling me that the cops on that block are very friendly. Sometimes they would help them because sometimes when they put their garbage bag on the streets, other people would try to steal them. And the cops would go to the people and get the bag back for them. But they didn't say who stole it.
I mean, they just seem to be people who don't have a lot of other ways of getting money, and this is how they do that. And this is their way of, you know, they take the recycling, and it's not costing me anything.
Excellent point.
It's an interesting phenomenon, you know, and maybe it's a problem in other neighborhoods where if people are being disrespectful about it, but in this neighborhood, it just seems the people who like collect the cans, they're very quiet. They're not disruptive. They seem to just, you know, they take their stuff, you know, and they put everything back and they go. And it's, you know, it's just kind of a quiet part of the fabric of the neighborhood in a way.
This is Hurricane Sandy, Halloween, boo.
So if this gets on TV, it's okay if we use it?
Yeah, it's okay. Do I look at you or the camera? Like which one? I'm not too sure.
Let's see. Let's look over here.
Okay.
Over here.
Okay,
You can
good.
look at me. We're making a movie about the people who collect bottles and cans.
Okay.
Any thoughts about them? Have you talked to them or you see
I
them?
have spoken to some people. There's an Asian couple, much older. They're out there every single day. The bottles that they collect are enormous. The piles are huge, bags and bags and bags. They just collect, and I asked her, "How much do you make? $600 to $700 a week?" I says, "Wow, that's a lot of money. Tax free."
Tax-free? You're your own boss?
Yeah, your own boss. You know what? It's sad. I mean, hopefully the police department or sanitation won't enforce that, you know, and give people a break. Because, like I said, somebody's trash is somebody else's treasure.
People who collect bottles and cans of scrap metal, have you talked to them or do you have any thoughts about their activity?
I actually have. I did speak to a couple of them. And one particular person, he makes about $50 a day collecting and redeeming bottles and cans. And he uses that money to pay his bills. So he's using it for a noble purpose. I mean, he's not using it for drugs or alcohol, but I'm sure there are some people who do. So then, hence, they don't rob anyone. So,
And there are people who have what we would call regular jobs who also use their money for drugs and alcohol.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So.
You said once before that you collected bottles and cans briefly yourself.
I did it for a time when I was unemployed.
How did you do?
I think I made about $10, and it was a lot of work. So I admire the folks who do it in all kinds of weather, and you know, really, it's a job. It's really a job.
And do you think it's a respectable job, or?
Absolutely. I mean, if a person's not robbing, stealing, anything like that, then absolutely nothing wrong with earning a few extra bucks doing that.
One morning, I was out just before sunrise, recording some incidental shots near our neighborhood's purgatory-like fringe, where the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway isolates a large swath of the city known as Red Hook. It was about 5 degrees Fahrenheit, so cold that, as you'll see, the camera was working only intermittently. I saw two men with shopping carts and headed in their direction hoping to speak with them. But in the time it took to open the camera, the situation had changed and I was in for a surprise. Inside the cart, there were about 6 aluminum cans, nothing else that was obvious. No one here would comment about the purpose of this encounter. Later, I asked a police spokesman about the incident and was told that, generally, no one in the neighborhood is detained unless there is a crime in progress. Then I showed him this recording. I was then told that the police do stop anyone who looks suspicious to gather information in case they commit a crime later. It was suggested that the police may not appreciate being filmed while doing their work, and with that I was referred to the NYPD's Public Information Office, but there was no response to my requests for interview. So I had fulfilled the objective of interviewing people about picking up trash, but suddenly, and quite obviously, I was a long way from finishing a film.
I come out here every day from 6 o'clock in the morning to the scrapyard close at 5 o'clock. To us, that's a job. Take care of your family and keep it moving. If the people that's giving us the trash or the people that throw it out, if they're not complaining, why the police station complaining? You're looking for something to complain about. I do what I have to do every day for me and mine. And I don't feel like because you wear a badge or you wear this uniform tell you that you are my mother. But I feel like this, every time you see a black person or every time you see a shopping cart or every time you see somebody homeless, we not out here stealing, we just out here trying to survive.
Roughly, in a month, how many times do the police stop you?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day. Like right now, they just stopped us on that corner. We made it here, and then I did this block, talk to you. By the time I get to Court Street, they're gonna stop me again. So that's just the way it is. This right here, they're gonna say that this piece right here is construction material. So they're gonna say we hauling construction material without a license. Then they send this right here, if you go and get in the cans, they're gonna say you stealing from sanitation. The last time they arrested us, they say we was in possession of stolen property. Now they trying to, yesterday they gave me a ticket. They say we hauling household material without a receipt. So now I got everybody that give us stuff. I put their name in my phone and put their numbers. That way, when they call now, they're gonna tell us that they can't call them. You know what I mean? You said, where did you get that? Well, I got it from right here. You can call them. No, we ain't gotta call nobody, but you're gonna arrest me anyway. So it's not about the scrap. It's about the city getting as much money as they can.
Okay, so does the judge, when you go to court, does the judge ever, I want to make sure I get you in the frame.
Oh no, the judge, most of the judges around here, like Mr. Calabrese, the way they looking at it, they filling up the courts with bull charges, excuse the expression. That's what they telling us, the charges is bull, because they saying that they holding us on laws that been on the book that should have been off the book years ago. They'll lock us up right here. Like right we stand here, you will lock me up, take me all the way to Coney Island precinct or Manhattan. Why would you take me to Manhattan? Because they know Calabrese gonna throw it out. So you take us to Coney Island or somewhere else, downtown Brooklyn, out of the area where you arrested. And you can give me 100 tickets, the judge throws the tickets out, but you still keep doing it so you can say, hey, I did something today. I can't fight for Wall Street and the millions of dollars and who stole this and how much money they stole. But the way I look at it, You already prospered. You got everything. You got all the money, all the business, all of it, and now you want the trash too? That's life.
Okay. Thanks very much.
All right.
Let's try that again.
You got right on the news right now, they talking about the police jumping out, stopping and frisking people. But everybody you stopping and frisking is black, Puerto Rican, Dominican. Ain't no police stopping this lady, right?
Right.
No police is stopping this lady. And she got a shopping cart, right? But because you know me, what's the difference between this lady walking with a shopping cart collecting, and me walking with a shopping cart collecting? What's me being different from her? But you will let her pass by, but you will lock us up. I guess to them, the city don't have enough money where you gotta arrest the homeless. Well, I'm gonna give you a ticket because you got a shopping cart. Why? Because you couldn't find a crime on me, so you can try to get some money out of me. This one that they can put on there, and I want them to put on there, I ain't gonna never, ever pay no fine. So they can kiss my ass, and I take that one personal. If you gonna send me to jail for trash and then make me pay $500 for the trash, F you. They can put that on their documentary.
During this time, a cover story appeared in the Village Voice. The article explained in detail what happens to our fellow citizens who are arrested for misdemeanors but cannot afford bail. The author of the article, Nick Pinto, explains.
So that story that you tell me is not particularly uncommon. When people are arrested, their first contact with the justice system is they're arraigned. And at arraignment, about half of all cases are disposed of right off the bat. Statistically, a small number of cases, but because New York City is very large, a large number of cases, a lot of people have bail set. In most cases, the bail set is what many people would think of as very low, $500, $1,000. It's usually in increments of $250 or $500. But what's really remarkable is that many of the people who are arrested and have bail set, even at these low numbers, are unable to make bail. And so that means that, without being able to rustle up $1,000, they're moldering in jail for days, weeks, in some cases months, until they go to trial. So that's disturbing for a couple of reasons. One is that you have people who are considered innocent because they haven't been found guilty, sitting in jail simply because they can't come up with the money. The other reason that it's disturbing is that this is a point of leverage that prosecutors use in these cases to extract plea deals, right? That they'll say, listen, you can plead guilty now, you'll get time served plus 30 days or something, you'll be back home with your kids, you can go back to your job, you won't lose your job. Or you can fight this case and I'm going to set bail, and you're not going to be able to make bail, and you'll be sitting here indefinitely, and we don't know who's going to be taking care of your kids. You'll probably lose your job, right? So this is a very powerful coercive technique that prosecutors have at their disposal, and from a couple of sources we can sort of see the effect that this has. There are a number of groups that have sort of been collecting and studying numbers related to bail. The main one is the Criminal Justice Association in New York, which tabulates all of this information. Human Rights Watch also issued a report on this a couple of years ago. So what those numbers show is that for people who are fighting their cases from out on the street, they are statistically much more likely to win their cases, or at the very least to avoid jail time, compared to people who are fighting their cases from in jail because they can't make bail. the real test case for this came up in the Bronx a couple years ago, when a defenders organization there began quietly running a semi-secret bail fund for their clients. They raised money, they posted bail for people who they thought were good candidates. Eventually, a judge found out about it, didn't like it, shut them down, but not before they'd posted bail for several hundred of their clients. And so from that sample set, none of their clients who they posted bail for returned to jail on the charges against them. Compare that with the general population who didn't have bail posted for them, who wound up pleading guilty more than 90% of the time. So it's really significant the way bail sort of winds up shaping the fates of people who enter the system. It's costing tens of millions of dollars for the city to warehouse people who have not been found guilty and who really are in jail simply because they can't post bail. So it has this profound human cost for the people who go through it, but it also has a real cost for the city and for its taxpayers.
The last two mayors, Giuliani and Bloomberg here in New York, have been privatizing our public space, methodically privatizing our public space. And increasingly hurting the smallest operators, mom and pop stores. They'll come into a little restaurant and boom, the hood over the stove is wrong and it's $700 fine. And that kind of thing has been going on, victimizing the lowest levels of the ecosystem of our community. I'm a supporter in my community, the Church of Stop Shopping. We are supporters of the gleaners, the people who work on the seams of society. On just a modest scale, just to give you this example, up in Windsor Terrace, Brooklyn, we will leave our bottles and cans and plastic items, and we'll sort of separate them, not so much for the city, which cannot be trusted to recycle our famously, this green mayor has better advertising than he has recycling. The recycling is very low, estimated at somewhere around 17% of what we put out is recycled. But with the gleaners, the Chinese grandmothers in the middle of the night, you really have a feeling like this is going to go back into the culture in such a way that it's helpful to this person. It brings local energy to our block, our community. This person, I see these same people night after night after night. You come to trust that level of intimacy and cooperation. Amen.
Is it true that citizens are stopped every day, issued summonses, and even arrested for recycling? When I put my air conditioner out on the sidewalk, according to local law, it became the property of New York City, and only an authorized sanitation employee is allowed to pick it up. Therefore, the citizen who picked up my air conditioner was, in fact, guilty of theft. If the thief used a motor vehicle, the fine is $2,000 and the vehicle is impounded. For a second offense, it's $5,000, and altogether it's possible for the City of New York to collect $10,000 in fines for a single instance of stealing any amount of your garbage. The media have dutifully and diligently disseminated the story of the city's increased enforcement efforts against thieves with foreign, unpronounceable names who comprise an organized underground market, working under the cover of darkness, stealing your valuable refuse, and costing you, the taxpayer, millions of dollars. But city officials and the media are derelict in their duty with regard to explaining consistently and specifically why the laws were enacted. In other words, Someone picked up my garbage. Why should I care? Would the police detain an older white gentleman hauling household material without a license? Over a period of a year, in different parts of the neighborhood, I conducted a series of very unscientific experiments to test this hypothesis.
I'm ready.
Okay, hit it. Where's the cop when you need that? Nothing? Let's try again. At times, it's difficult for an aspiring movie producer to know how to make progress and complete a film. Other days, it almost seems too easy. For example, one day, this flyer advertising removal of discarded appliances from homes and businesses appeared across the street from my apartment. Perhaps this person would agree to be interviewed. After a brief telephone conversation, Solomon Washington invited me to accompany him on a typical day of collecting scrap metal, beginning at the unbachelor-like hour of 6:45 a.m. He arrived the next morning, 15 minutes early, ready to go. And about how much do you make in a day?
Me? Could be $50, could be $200. Never know. It's like Wall Street.
Solomon showed me a summons he received from the police for transporting construction material without a license.
Hauling construction.
I asked him where he thought my old air conditioner might have ended up.
Since so many people have no work out here, they're using whatever vehicle to pick up this scrap metal too.
Right.
It's a whole, by 6:37 in the morning, you have a whole line full of vehicles to go into the scrap yard.
He explained our itinerary and shared some tricks of the trade.
A lot of them rob you.
Yeah.
They bluntly rob you.
They weigh the stuff and then they say...
They just tell you whatever...
They pay you whatever they want.
Basically. Yeah. That's why I try to go to ones that's going to try to give a reasonable rate.
So I didn't get your name on the camera. Tell me your name.
King Solomon.
Is that your full name?
No.
No.
Solomon is my full name.
Solomon's your first name?
Yes, sir.
What we would call first name?
Yes, sir. That's why I get see from my flyer. That's why a bunch of Jewish people call me too. When they see Solomon, they assume it's another Jew until I come on the scene. But they still let me in their house or whatever and get what they offer. van right here? See that van?
Yeah.
He's looking around to see what's in here. But since he sees me here, he don't want to come in here.
Oh,
If I wasn't here, he'll be in here to look for whatever he can get. I come get plastic and concrete. He's trying to show them he's got to jail for picking up his garbage.
So those are scrappers, they're unloading.
Yes. That's the so-called precious metal. The aluminum, copper, whatever. Go through there.
You want to ask if it's okay to take pictures?
Good morning. You want to know if it's all right to take a picture? No.
No pictures. Okay, and tell me what you got there today.
9180.
Okay, for how much weight?
680 pounds of light iron.
Okay, still some to go?
Yeah, just left in the back.
Okay.
This one is loading up whatever aluminum.
And the one up the street is called what? Eh.
That's their little pocket change. 91 and 17. And
$108.
For a couple of hours work.
It's 9 a.m.
Yes. It don't be like that every day.
So a policeman, plainclothes detective on the subway train gave you a ticket?
Yes. And I called them all types of piece of shit. Told them go lock up someone that committing a crime. You out here wasting taxpayer money by harassing somebody that paid their fare walking between the car doors. But it's no sign up there says no traveling between cars.
And how long ago was that?
2 weeks ago. I'm supposed to went to court Friday. I missed the date.
And that's about the time you got your hand hit with a hammer?
Yes.
It's been a run of bad luck.
As long as you can walk away, it's no problem.
And they want you to pay a fine?
$85.
$85.
Will not get it from me. I ain't got no job. I pick up garbage. The court gets rich off these poor people anyway for these little petty charges. Giuliani started that.
So that's a safe parking spot?
For now.
Nobody's going to argue with that.
Nope.
Thank you very much for your help.
Yes, sir.
The city is stepping up efforts to catch thieves who swipe appliances left for curbside recycling. According to reports over the last several months, old refrigerators, air conditioners, and other items can add up to some serious cash at scrap metal recycling facilities. The city has a contract with an outside company to handle them.
A panel of New York City's environmental thought leaders and pioneers generously agreed to sort out what seems to be the city's love-hate relationship with recycling and to discuss the city's current and future plans. City Council member Brad Lander represents Cobble Hill, Park Slope, and other Brooklyn neighborhoods and teaches public policy at Brooklyn Law School. Stephen Cohen is the executive director of the Earth Institute and is a professor in the practice of public affairs at Columbia University. Dr. Cohen has also served as a consultant for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Brendan Sexton served the City of New York as Director of Operations and as Commissioner of Sanitation in the Koch administration in the 1980s. Eric Goldstein is a senior attorney for the Natural Resources Defense Council and has been involved with environmental policy and litigation since the 1980s. Mr. Goldstein teaches at the New York University School of Law. I asked first about the history of recycling in the city.
Although elements of recycling go back in New York City and indeed in urban areas around the nation hundreds of years, the modern history of recycling in New York began in the 1970s with a couple of volunteer projects scattered throughout the city. In the 1980s, then Mayor Koch proposed to build a network of 5 to 8 incinerators as a major way of dealing with the city trash. And many of us in the environmental community felt that with less than 1% of the city's waste being recycled, that recycling ought to be the city's top priority for waste disposal. So in the mid-1980s, along with Ruth Messenger, who was then in the city council, along with several other leaders in the New York City Council, the law that became the landmark 1989 recycling law was passed. And at the time it was enacted, then City Council Speaker Vallone called it one of the most important pieces of legislation ever advanced in the City Council. What that required was that every household in New York City be served by curbside collection of recyclables. And this was the beginning of the modern recycling program in New York. There were efforts by several administrations not to implement that statute comprehensively, and so NRDC, along with several city council people and residents in areas that were not being served by a recycling program, brought suit in the early 1990s against the Giuliani administration to implement this mandatory recycling law. Efforts finally increased, and by the turn of the century, New York was recycling as much as 22% of its residential waste stream. In the early 2000s, the sanitation department decided to temporarily suspend collections of plastics and metals, and recycling fell off after that, and it has never really fully regained its peak levels here in New York.
I think the urban crisis of the 70s and 80s had city managers were sort of scared straight. You realized it really mattered that you run things well. And so lots of things like management by objectives, measurement, productivity initiatives were being introduced, much tighter budget. This was post the fiscal crisis, or much tighter budget controls, etc. And people began to realize that we were spending enormous sums of money collecting trash, and we didn't really know what to do with it. We were running a huge landfill and some incinerators, and polluting. We were just barely in keeping with environmental regulations or even violating them in many of the sanitation facilities. Waste management consisted of people putting their stuff out to the curb and then not thinking about it ever again. And it was left to cities and counties to figure out what to do about it. And mostly what they did about it is they picked it up and then found a gully somewhere and threw it in. I mean, it was a fancier version of that, but we were picking it up, driving it to a central location, and dumping it down on the ground. In our case, it was mostly at Fresh Kills. Fresh Kills was then the largest landfill in the world. It would not qualify today. There are bigger ones now. And it is, in fact, now closed. It's becoming a park. But that's about all. That's what waste management consisted of then. And so the crisis of urban management and the environmental concerns of the 70s and 80s, this was the time during which the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act and so on were passed. And these practices could not continue, but no one was quite sure what to do instead. So we had the scary challenge, but the really quite exciting challenge of figuring out what was going to be waste management in big cities from now on. And most of what we grappled with and came up with is still what constitutes New York City's waste program, most especially recycling. That has what we designed and implemented in the late 80s, early 90s is the program that New York City is still perfecting. There's still a lot of progress needed, but that's the program.
Nationally, the amount of garbage that per capita has doubled since 1960. But what's interesting about it is that the amount that's going to landfills is still about the same, because about half the waste throughout the whole country is either recycled or used in compost or anaerobic digesters or in waste-to-energy plants burned for electricity. So one of the goals in New York City's latest Plan NYC 2030 plan is in fact to increase the diversion rate of waste away from landfills. Because landfilling is probably the worst way to deal with garbage. You're basically digging a hole in the ground and throwing it into the ground, and then eventually the hole fills up and it becomes higher and higher. So the Fresh Kills landfill is an example of it. Where I was growing up in Brooklyn, the Fountain Avenue and Pennsylvania landfills were becoming, taller and taller. In fact, my brother used to say we should turn it into a ski resort. We'll call it the Brooklyn Alps.
We need to do a lot of things to improve and increase in recycling in New York City for many reasons. We're behind. We're behind our own goals for recycling. We're dramatically behind comparable European cities, some of whom recycle twice as much of their waste stream and more as we do. And that's partly about the broader global environmental issues, and we're in and if we can't get to more recycling, the consequences for the planet are severe. But there are also really important issues for the city. We pay more and more and more to dispose of non-recyclable waste. It has to go further and further. And we wind up in quite a lot of political debate and argument. So right now there's debates about the facility on the Upper East Side. The administration's proposed a new incineration. They call it waste to energy, but it's incineration. And the Staten Islanders are nervous it's going to be back at Fresh Kills, and there is a big opposition there. And by far the best thing we could do to address all those issues is do a set of things that would take us toward that goal of 30% diversion through recycling. Even that's relatively modest, truthfully. We're far from it, but again, there's European cities getting to 50%. So we need to dramatically increase recycling in New York City, and there's a lot of ways to do that. Now, to that point, it's simple. Past that point, it gets a little complicated.
Complicated indeed. Let's review. The 1989 curbside recycling mandate has not been implemented comprehensively or consistently because, as a former mayoral candidate might say, the cost of collecting, separating, and processing recyclables is too damn high. The cost of transporting garbage out of the city and into landfills is also too damn high. But as the city continued with this practice, citizens like Joseph and Solomon were more or less welcome to collect material and deliver it to the nearest private scrapyard. A win for local business, a win for the independent entrepreneur, a win for the environment as the material was recycled, and a win for the city government that saved money with fewer tons of material to collect and dispose of. In 2006, with the release of Plan YC 2030, a compilation of ambitious long-range environmental initiatives, the city set a target of 30% of residential waste diverted from landfills, doubling the current rate of around 15%. In order to reach that goal, the sanitation department had to reinstate curbside collection of recyclables and create the infrastructure to process the material, then deliver it to someone who can make something new out of it.
Actual recycling, as opposed to just separating and picking up the trash in separate trucks and so on, actually getting the material back into the market is something cities are pretty thoroughly unqualified to pull off. Cities don't mine minerals, they don't manufacture paper, they don't make plastic products, almost none of the things we would think of as recycling.
We're trying to create art here.
She's having a good time too. Look how tiny she is and how huge that noise is.
I can't
really
shoot it
tiny.
because I don't have a
Oh, that's all
contract.
right. Well, wait a minute. There she goes. Anyway, the point is, cities don't do things like smelt aluminum and so on. They wouldn't even know how to go about it, so they necessarily, at one point or another, engage in a partnership with processors, manufacturers, remanufacturers. Even just the process of sorting and getting the material into the shape where it is a commodity someone else can manufacture something from. Getting paper from the trash stream, just separated and cleaned up enough so that someone else can then throw it in a pulper and make something new out of it. Just the first half of that process is something most cities have never done. Never mind the whole thorough making a consumer product out of that. And for some items like aluminum, I mentioned aluminum or metals, it's actually a fairly complicated and even industrially hazardous process. It takes a lot of expertise. So cities have turned to private sector operators in almost every case I know of.
Well, the city adopted a solid waste management plan in 2006. It was enhanced by Speaker Quinn in the City Council and advanced by Mayor Bloomberg and supported by the environmental community. It does a variety of things to bring borough equity to the disposal of waste. And in terms of recycling, it maps out plans for enhancing the program. One key element of that is a new recycling facility that is now being constructed on the Brooklyn waterfront in Sunset Park to handle all the recyclables that will be collected.
Work starts on a new recycling plant that city officials say will help the environment and the economy. Mayor Bloomberg joined elected officials at the groundbreaking of the new Sims recycling facility in Sunset Park. The $44 million facility is scheduled to open at the end of next year.
Under the 20-year agreement with Sims, a private recycling corporation, the city will split the cost of constructing a $100 million processing station and will share in the revenue generated by the sale of the material. In order to meet the tonnage obligation to Sims, the sanitation department must deliver the maximum amount of metal, glass, and plastic from the city sidewalks. And so, the city sought to establish a monopoly on the heaviest and most valuable recyclable items by making it illegal for citizens to collect the household appliances that the sanitation department in the recent past had refused to collect.
When Sims opens, the council passed a law that will significantly expand plastics recycling. And that's possible because we're going to have this facility. And you wouldn't, some of that money is public dollars, but some of the investment is private dollars. And I don't think a private company like Sims would invest in infrastructure and a facility to do recycling if they couldn't have confidence that they were going to get the waste stream. And so I think it is a reasonable goal to consider if we want to create that big infrastructure, enable plastics recycling, enable contracting with a private company. How can they know what they're going to get? You talked about the quite punitive, $2,000 fine, which, look, if that's somebody a block over who needed an air conditioner for their, a room, and they saw it and they went and got the car and picked up the air conditioner, great. Most people would not want that person fined. But I think most people would agree that we wouldn't want people putting out their recyclables on the days, and then a whole set of people coming who essentially had small businesses with vans and crews that weren't the Department of Sanitation, with no licensing to scoop up everything and go run to Sims or somewhere else. Like, you could create havoc.
I'm happy to address it. First of all, it's a great sign that the city is now compelled to write statutes to prevent people from stealing recyclables. It proves what the environmental community and solid waste experts have been saying all along. Recycled waste has value. And it has so much value, in fact, that people are going around stealing it. And that is a serious matter, because what they're really doing is stealing from all of us. We as taxpayers benefit when the wastes we put out to be recycled are collected, and part of the city's program is having the city get compensated for every ton of waste that it drops off at a recycling facility. So if you're stealing recyclables on the street in a professional manner using a motor vehicle, you're really stealing from the city taxpayers as a whole. So it does make sense for the city to try to restrict that conduct. Right now, there are continuing reports that people are going around stealing recyclable waste, again, taking it out of the sanitation department's hands, and therefore cheating the taxpayers out of the money that the city would get for those recyclables, using them for their own private good instead. The amount of those fines may sound high when one reads the statute, but rarely are the maximum fines applied in the first instance. And obviously, as with any law, you need to have sensible enforcement policies. But with a sensible enforcement policy and with appropriate warning to the folks who are stealing this material, these new laws, while at first blush they may seem puzzling to folks, make a lot of sense, keeping the money that New Yorkers are entitled to in our tax coffers.
So we do have a waste problem, and so if you can recycle waste or reuse raw materials, that's a good idea. On the other hand, punishing somebody for picking up somebody else's garbage and finding another use for it doesn't seem to me like it should be a high priority use of law enforcement time. The kind of person who goes around picking up other people's garbage has, in a sense, you might even say, look, they're industrious. I mean, when you see people doing this kind of thing, it really shows, yeah, they don't have a job, but they're working, and they want to do something with their time that's productive, and maybe somebody will pay them more for the air conditioner than they can get for the empty cans, obviously. And so it just doesn't seem to me to be one of those things that's a great harm. I mean, very often when the judicial system sees them, I think you alluded to this, the judges say, no, I'm not going to, I'm just throwing this out. This is ridiculous. I mean, so what did you do? Well, I killed somebody. What did you do? I robbed a bank. What did you do? Well, I stole garbage. I mean, it just seems ridiculous.
Well, the city always had ownership. I mean, by the laws granting the city ownership of your trash, if you abandon it, we own it, have always been there, actually. It's just that they used to be considered relieving the public of a nuisance. The stuff was trash because nobody wanted it. So the fact that it became the property of the city was considered a convenience for people. It was never considered a taking of something of value from the scavengers or others who might otherwise have it. The fact that partly because of city and other actors helping to develop a healthy recycling industry in this country, The fact is that what used to be the profession called rag pickers has once again become a real, actual part of the economy, and it is, was in fact probably not well foreseen when the laws were drafted. It is true that people are more attuned today to this notion of unintended consequences than we were in the 70s or 80s, partly because some reactionaries have used that argument as a reason why government should never do anything, because you always wind up messing something else up. Of course, they don't realize it's also a reason why businesses should never do anything and why the Boy Scouts should never do anything. You do has some consequences you didn't anticipate. So, indeed, recycling had some consequences we didn't anticipate, some of which have been quite healthy and marvelous. It means cities can now get money for some of what used to be a very expensive burden, getting rid of trash. But it also means that there has developed this competition for materials and for resources between cities and counties on one hand, New York being a great example, and rag pickers, scavengers, scrap dealers, independent entrepreneurs, thieves, all kinds of descriptions depending on what part of this economic activity they're engaged in. And there is an active competition. And technically, the city has every right to assert its legal right to this stuff, and should. In fact, the recycling program depends on the city asserting this right. But as it plays out in reality, it's sometimes messier than you might wish.
It's possible that the city's residential recycling plan makes environmental and financial sense, but the information about the plan that is available to the public is extremely limited. The Department of Sanitation's Office of Public Information refused more than 30 requests for interview and refused to answer questions via email, as did the city's Office of Management and Budget, as did all city council members on the sanitation committee who voted for the theft laws and funding for the new facility, as did Sims representatives. Members of the public who are stopped by the police or arrested for recycling could use an advocate in the government, such as the New York City public advocate Bill de Blasio, but representatives from that office failed to respond to 24 requests for comment. Every day across New York City, 1,000 people like Joseph and Solomon deliver recyclable material to private scrapyards, but that tonnage is not recorded in the city's recycling tally. No evidence was found or presented for this film, demonstrating that taking household appliances and other metal out of Solomon's truck and putting it into the sanitation department's truck will actually increase the amount of material that is recycled, or that paying unionized sanitation employees to collect and deliver the additional tonnage to Sims in exchange for a piece of the revenue will be more cost-effective than allowing people like Joseph and Solomon to collect and deliver the material for free. Finally, regarding the 2007 government-issued press releases describing citizens as thieves, in an interview with American Recycler magazine, a sanitation department deputy conceded that, also in 2007, more than 50 sanitation workers were caught delivering discarded appliances to private scrapyards in exchange for cash. The thieves from the sanitation department were not put in jail and were not fined thousands of dollars, but were temporarily suspended from their jobs. No information is available regarding subsequent or ongoing investigations.
We had to come and get a job because they arrested me 4 times in like a month's time, so I can't do no more. I had to find me a job.
Okay. What actually were you arrested for?
Transporting household goods without a license, being in possession of a shopping cart, walking in the street, hindering traffic, anything so they can give you a ticket.
So what job are you doing now?
We building up and tearing down. We do demolition.
You're swinging a sledgehammer?
Swinging a sledgehammer.
The wheelbarrow?
Wheelbarrow, sledgehammers, concrete, carrying bricks, anything that they gonna pay me to do.
It's hard work, right?
Harder than scrapping.
So are you going to keep trying to start a business?
Of course. Of course. That's what I do. I wake up every morning thinking how to take care of my family. when you came, I came from scrapping, I came from homeless, sleeping on roofs, sleeping in alleys, to going in the shelter, met my wife, we got married, I got me a job until I have enough to buy me a truck. Once I can buy me a truck, get me a little license on to get the truck insured and all that, then I'm gonna go back to doing what I do, cleaning out basements. And I gotta go to work.
That's a wrap.